I'm Dennis Anderson along with Julie Zenner, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
How much can you expect to pay in property taxes next year? We have the numbers from St. Louis County, and county officials are here to explain them.
Are there better ways to respond to crime in local communities? We'll look at one effort that mixes technology and old-fashioned discourse.
And the latest business news shows growth in key areas in Duluth.
Almanac North next here on PBS. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday evening. Julie, it's absolutely gorgeous out there as we move into the fall season.
Yeah, it's really starting to feel quite a bit like summer again.
So many leaves are falling off. It doesn't last very long, but it has been beautiful out there.
It has been beautiful.
All right, let's get started.
All right,
Thanks.
Thank you, Denny. In the biggest county in Minnesota, the county's share of the tax levy for the next year has been set and will mean a probable 3% increase for property owners. One St. Louis County Commissioner says that's based on a budget that is both responsible and responsive, and that commissioner is here to talk with us. Keith Nelson is the chair of the board's Finance Committee, and he's joined by County Administrator Kevin Gray. And thanks to both of you for being here. Appreciate you coming in. Commissioner, a property tax increase likely this year. Not quite 3%, 2.9% I think is what you set the maximum at. Do you think it's going to wind up pretty close to that?
I believe that it will. One of the things, if you look at the history of St. Louis County, our preliminary levy to our final levy, we have remained very, very consistent. And I think that's a result of the consistency that we have within administration, within our department heads. It's a process. It's not something that we just come up with. It takes a lot of work to get to this point.
The 2.9% increase, where's most of that money going to be spent?
In this particular budget, the vast majority of it is actually going into corrections. We've got some issues up at the Northeast Regional Correction Facility, some long overdue improvements, and some improvements that once they're completed are going to save taxpayers in this county considerable money. But we have a process there. It'll be about June 30th of next year before we have it all completed and it starts actually paying us back.
So NERC is going to take medium security prisoners?
That is correct. NERC is going to.
They've not had that before.
We have not had that before, although if you look at, and I've served on the NERC board now for 12 years as well, and if you look at the prisoners that we're currently taking, the offenses have gotten a lot more egregious over time. And this medium security component of it really allows us to do discipline within the facility, which we have not had the ability. Plus, it's going to save us a lot of money in housing prisoners out of St. Louis County over the years.
Kevin Gray, are there other areas where the increase is needed that this is going to help out?
Well, there's lots of areas to address in any budget and ins and outs. We've had some ups and downs on the revenue side. State and federal reimbursements for key programs continue to kind of slide, and the county is left to pick up the slack. We've invested not only in our facilities out at the NERC, but also in our Government Services Center in downtown Duluth, in our range, the Virginia Courthouse, and also making critical investments in fleet equipment otherwise, and other sort of capital investments that have a long-term dividend really for the county.
For people who aren't really familiar with the county budget, talk about the overall size and what this represents as a percentage of that.
Well, it's as you noted, it's just below 3% in terms of the levy increase. So the property tax share of the budget is about $115 million, $116. The budget is $320 million overall. 1,700 employees spread across the largest county in Minnesota and the largest county east of the Mississippi. So we have challenges to make sure that our services reach to all of our citizens across the county, from south to north and east to west. So it's a challenge that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, 320 million, 1,700 employees. It's a big operation.
Kevin, the finalization of the budget will come, I think it's on the 16th of December. Could that budget change much between now and then?
It could. As Commissioner Nelson noted, though, historically we have not changed the budget or lowered it. There are some counties or governmental units that play the game, if you will, of setting high a levy and then dropping it down. But we think it's more straightforward to put our best punch right at the beginning, and so people know what they're dealing with and what we're dealing with on their behalf.
But Keith, it wouldn't go higher than the 2.9.
It statutorily cannot go above the 2.9, but Administrator Gray is correct in the sense that we try to put that number out there early on. We want people to be well informed of where we're going to be at, and we typically don't put a number out that's above where we would like to be. We typically set it exactly where we not want to be, but need to be.
Now, of course, Health and Human Services is a huge part of the county budget. Have you seen any savings or improved access because of the Affordable Care Act coming in that could maybe help mitigate some of the other
I think
shortage?
there's an awful lot of work yet to do there. We are so fortunate in St. Louis County to have the professional staff that we do within Health and Human Services, led by Ann Bushy. We truly have a superstar there. So as we look to the future, with all of the kinks that are in MinCare and in the Affordable Health Care Act, navigating those waters has been pretty interesting for St. Louis County, and certainly we're looking to the future to try and iron out all of the intricacies of getting that out and working within our public.
Kevin, the county is facing a $5.7 million budget gap. What's being done about that?
Well, a number of things. First of all, the levy is part of the solution. So that helps to address that. We're working hard to look at how we do things, where we do them, and see if we can do them more cost effectively. With the implementation of technology is a big part of helping us to be more productive and more service oriented. So that's a big piece of it. And quite frankly, we continue just to always work on reviewing every position, every business line, and see that we can do it with the most cost-efficient way. So a part of the solution is the levy. The rest is we really need to absorb it. We can't pass everything on to our taxpayers, and the commissioners have been real clear about that.
Will that gap continue to widen, or do you expect you can really close that gap over a period of a few years?
I think that we're going to continue to close that gap. We've been very prudent. The commissioners have been very fiscally savvy and not frugal, but wise in the investment in direction in terms of resource management. So we've been very fortunate to have a good board, an engaged board, strong leaders on the finance level, and Commissioner Nelson, and alternating with Commissioner Rocker, two of our longer-term serving commissioners as well. But we've been fortunate to I think have an outstanding group of department heads. Ann Bushy was referenced in regard to Health and Human Services. And across the board, we've got some outstanding people who want to be very responsible with taxpayer dollars.
And the economy seems to be picking up a little bit. There was some good news in Duluth this week with the jobs numbers coming out.
Certainly the economy here in Duluth, you know, hearing those jobs numbers, we still have some very concerning jobs numbers on the Iron Range. But, you know, over the past several years working to manage our finances, for St. Louis County to have a AA+ bond rating, we have worked very, very hard to get to that point, and the economy is helping. Our future in mining is going to be a big plus for us. That day is coming.
Keith, what's the biggest issue in your district on the Iron Range?
The biggest issue right now in my district on the Iron Range is getting some jobs, getting some mining jobs. You know, for each mining job, of course, there's 3 or 4 jobs in the support sector. So as we work to get some of these plants up and running, and not just in the ferrous, but in non-ferrous as well, that's going to have a huge impact up there. So we're looking forward to those. I
know it's a complicated formula, but any idea the dollar amount impact that that your proposed property tax levy would have on the average homeowner in the county?
You know, one of the things that's a challenge for the county, unlike cities and school districts where they're kind of singular, is that levels for everybody else, tax levies for everybody else, impact our calculation. But there has been growth, particularly in the residential and some commercial growth, and we're seeing that, I think, especially looking ahead to next year. But this year, we're seeing some growth that will soften the impact. And, you know, I would say that it would be under $30 for a $200,000 home. But we have to push those numbers a little bit and make sure that that's accurate. And, of course, the disparity in taconite tax districts complicated at the county level.
What capital improvement projects is the county facing, Kevin, over the long haul?
Well, over the long haul, we do look ahead 5 years at a minimum for our capital improvements. Right now, as Commissioner Nelson noted, we're engaged in renovating and remodeling the NERC facility and really repurposing it to handle a different type of prisoner and avoid the shipping back to the jail and helping to address our jail overcrowding issues. Looking ahead, we do have some work to be done in our Virginia Service Center, our Virginia Government Services Center, if you will. We've addressed the courthouse there, but we've got an old facility that needs a lot of work, and we're in downtown Virginia. We want to be very accessible and have better accommodations.
Roads and bridges still a big issue in your region?
Roads and bridges are always going to be a big issue. With 3,000 miles of roads, 1,600 miles of those are gravel. 1,400 miles are bituminous surface, 600 bridges. You know, we truly are a huge county.
Always needs work.
It is something that I have proposed the possibility of our board acting on a 0.5% sales tax as a result of the condition of many of our roads. And I think that's going to be an investment that our board talks about in the very near future. One of the things, just to point out, Administrator Gray was remiss in not mentioning our North Rescue Squad building, which is something that we're really excited about up there. A couple of $1 million investment into a group that truly puts in thousands of volunteer hours and good work throughout the area.
That's for sure.
And I would be remiss if I didn't wrap us up right now. So thanks so much. Getting the signal.
So much.
We'll have
you
to
very
have
much.
you come back and talk about the
Appreciate it.
methadone clinic. We
Thank
didn't even
you
get
both.
to that. So.
Lots to talk about there.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
As of the first of the year, area garbage haulers will be feeling the crunch of new landfill legislation. That's when WLSSD will charge those haulers more than twice as much for solid waste disposal, now that landfill space is becoming more and more valuable.
The costs are incurred because we are coming into compliance with current state rules that will apply certainly to our landfill and to other landfills around the state that will be the survivors after the state achieves its goals of closing down most of the landfills.
Zenith Disposal hauls an average of 50 tons of solid waste every day, and they don't intend to bear the burden of increased costs all by themselves.
It will filter down to residential and commercial customers to some extent.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But while Zenith is not yet sure just how much their customer rates will be affected, WLSSD estimates the average household could pay $5 or more a month in additional charges, and that may be enough to make area residents take a hard look at just what they throw away. Colleen Burns, KDLH News.
What's the best way to deter crime and create a safer community? A new effort underway in Duluth combines neighborhood involvement with the tracking of crime statistics and police accountability. It's called Community Compstat. And here to tell us more is the project manager, retired Duluth Police Lieutenant Leigh Wright, and a member of the Compstat support team, Duluth City Council President Linda Krug. And thank you both for being here. Leigh, how is this project different from the status quo?
Well, it's a lot different because we're involving the community in this. And I don't know, Dennis, if you know the history of Compstat, but it started early on in the 1990s in New York with Bill Bratton. And it was a way for law enforcement organizations to track crime, hot spots, commonalities, and patterns. And it was a way for the department to focus their resources. But what we decided to do here in Duluth is kind of tip Compstat on its head and bring the community in, be transparent as a police organization and accountable to the community, and also let the community lead. We know by our stats in the police department where the hot spots and some of the crimes are, but really, where does the community want us? And this was a better way to reach out to the community besides the coffee and the cop things, which were great. But we weren't getting a broad enough spectrum.
So, Lieutenant, the community can plug into that anytime they wish.
Anytime they wish. We meet twice a month, once in Lincoln Park and then once at the Hillside. First Thursday of the month at the Hillside on Thursdays from 5:30 to 6:30, and then on the third Thursday at the Harrison Community Club, same time. And we look for community participation.
Councilor, why is that community participation so important?
Because we all live in the community, and if we want to have vibrant communities, we need to have everybody at the table. And I first got involved when I was running and was really concerned about the Seaway and Lincoln Park. And I was thrilled when this community Compstat process started to get underway. And we are starting to see some successes now with the Seaway because of the having so many different partners at the table, the police, the residents, the Seaway itself, some area businesses, One Roof Housing, Center City, I mean, probation officers, there's just all sorts of folks at the table.
Sure. So, Councilor, what kind of community response are you getting?
So I've been involved, about the last year and a half on this, and we've had really very good community participation. The Hillside one is brand new, so we're hoping we get the same kind of participation. But we've had as many as 40, 50 people, residents, at a meeting, and then it's waned a little bit at times where you might get 10 or so, but it varies depending on the issue, I guess, in the month.
Lieutenant, what are the issues that people seem most concerned about in their neighborhoods?
Well, what we've seen early on in Lincoln Park, there was a big issue with the Seaway and an Epic Center around there. For instance, in 2013, there were a lot of police calls there, and the community was really concerned because it flowed over, and there was a perception problem too. Is our neighborhood that troubled? And we found out from the community that what they really wanted to see was officers walking around in their community. They were concerned about blight. They were concerned about drug houses. They were concerned if there was a robbery, burglary, quality of life issues, vehicle prowls. And some of those weren't reported traditionally to 911, but they could report them to the community Compstat. And the next month, we report back to the community what we did with that information that we received at the meeting before, which is really great. Now, Compstat has 4 main tenets, which is accurate and timely intelligence, right? We want to get the information. And then also effective deployment. We have to be, effective tactics. We have to use the right tactic for the problem. And then also rapid deployment. If we learn about a burglary or something that happened 6 weeks ago, you know, it just sometimes falls through the crack and we can't get on it. We can't redeploy the police department's resources in that area when it happened 6 weeks ago. And then lastly, it's relentless follow-up and then assessment of the strategy. Did that particular strategy work? Now, it's not just all police stuff. It could be Sept, which is crime prevention through environmental design. So we might be asking for more lighting in an area. We might be asking for trees, somebody to cut the grass and the weeds down, because when you have blight, there's a correlation with higher crime, and that's why One Roof is so involved with this.
Lieutenant, you were on the police force for 26 years.
Yes.
That's a long time. In that period of time, you know, obviously you were able to kind of measure the barometer of how people felt in the city. Do you think, generally speaking, Duluthians feel safe?
In some areas, yes, I think they do. Now, there was a survey that went out recently around the Essentia Hospital, and the employees there did not feel safe leaving at night. So right now, we're looking at that particular area to do some Sept work in there. But mostly, people feel safe generally when it's dark and there's blighted areas. The broken window theory, people feel less safe, less lighting, less safe. But generally, people do feel safe in our city, and bringing the community together and the multidisciplinary team of all these city agencies to focus our energy together on an issue is just great.
And the city has had a blight removal
Yes.
team for a couple of
Yes.
years now. These same partners have come together.
Exactly, same partners. And we just heard Chief Ramsey give the kind of his budget presentation and talked about the perception of how safe Duluthians feel, and it's like 95% during the day feel very safe. And it's so there are some perceptions and some real hot spots at night that that we're working on.
Are all Duluth neighborhoods kind of experiencing the same types of crimes, or do different neighborhoods experience other different?
I think it varies. I think it varies.
Okay.
It varies. I think you have that correlation with the socioeconomic status of individuals. You might see a little more crime in certain areas. Far east, for instance, you wouldn't see maybe quite as many of a certain crime, maybe more speeding and less of something else, but it varies.
Do you see the Compstat program making the Duluth Police Department more accountable to citizens?
I do, and that's why I really liked it, because the officers are phenomenal, do a great job, and we don't always promote it. But this is a way to be more transparent and accountable to the community. And not only that, if they are asking for officers in a certain area because they don't feel safe, as a lieutenant, I was reallocating my resources. I was in charge of the west side of the city. I would have my officers be in that area. I would track how often they were there, and I would report back to the community the next month. And if I failed, I would also report that. Like, I wanted to spend 20 hours in this area, I only spent 10. So it was the accountability and the transparency and working together and bringing the city leaders together.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant, Counselor.
yes.
Appreciate you being on here tonight.
Great. Thank you
Great
very
story
much.
to tell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Time now for the week's economic news from the folks at Business North. Duluth and the surrounding area are rebounding strongly from the Great Recession. According to U.S. Census data unveiled Thursday by Mayor Don Ness, there were 109,930 private sector jobs during August in the metropolitan statistical area. That includes the Twin Ports and all of St. Louis, Carleton, and Douglas counties, he said. That's an all-time high in terms of total employment, which also includes public sector jobs. But when you include the public sector jobs, the number rises to 133,243. That's proof Duluth is a city on the rise, Ness said, and has become the 15th fastest growing economy in America.
Inventus and Burger King on Wednesday said they have signed leases to locate in the new Sugar Maple Crossings development in Hermantown. Inventus will relocate to Hermantown from downtown Duluth, where its current landlord needs more space to accommodate its own growing operations. After reviewing the traffic count and housing patterns, Burger King decided Sugar Maple Crossings would be an attractive site for a new restaurant. It'll be located at the front end of the development, which is just north of Bullion RV on Miller Trunk Highway. The restaurant tentatively will open by Thanksgiving. The $4 million project is being developed by Platinum Properties, which also developed Hermantown Square.
Wilcox Bank Shares, owners of Grand Rapids State Bank, has acquired 2 Crow River Bank locations and a mortgage division in the west metro communities of Buffalo, Delano, and Mound, Minnesota. The banks will be renamed and rebranded as Minnesota Lakes Bank, said Noah Wilcox, President and Chief Executive Officer, who grew up in the Mound area. Wilcox Bank Shares, which has operated in Grand Rapids for more than 100 years, plans to retain the majority of workers currently employed by the acquired banks. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
And now here's some viewer reaction from last week's program.
Last week on Almanac North, we talked with a City of Duluth official about proposals for the future of the Lester Park Golf Course, including a possible closure. The golf course has been losing money for years. Here's what some of our viewers had to say in response.
Calling about the Lester Park Golf Course. I hope they at least keep 18 holes open. The one suggestion I would have, and I don't know how many women feel the same way, but my wife will not play there because the women's tees are just basically the same as the men's tees on most of the holes. They need to move them up.
Hello, my comment is that Lester Park should not be sold because then we should consider selling Spirit Mountain, the aquarium, the zoo, and many other public amenities. The value of that is greater than monetary gain. It's an amenity that people take advantage of and enjoy. The library should be sold. Consider these things before you make these sales.
There's a lot of people that are going to be retiring in the near future. So I know I'd like to golf more. So maybe there'll be a lot more golfers out there in the next 2 to 5 years. Thank you very much. Bye.
And thank you for commenting. If you have a comment about tonight's show, give us a call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And please visit the WDSE website for the latest program information and to watch archived video of your favorite public television programming. Julie, good weekend to get outside and enjoy. The forecast is great.
Sounds like a beautiful weekend. I hope that you get out.
There you go. I think a lot of folks will this time. For Julie and all of us here at Almanac North, I'm Dennis Anderson. Have a great weekend. Good night, everybody, and be kind.